Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Today, I have got the tower in the Marseille. It's Le Maison Dieu. It's like the house of God. Kind of an interesting, I would say, significant difference as the obstacle, and the two of coins or pentacles as the opportunity. Um, so, starting with the tower. Um, I think that I think that we can think of the tower as symbolizing a container. um, it's it's a house, it's a container, it's a place that many people occupy, and it I think it kind of I think towers, buildings, houses of God, whatever you want to, however you want to think about it, they create these containers which to a degree unify anyone who is inside, unify them with some shared identity. We are all people of this house, this household. The court. You think about castles and stuff like that. It's like the court that refers to a bunch of people, but they all identify as they are of the court. They are members of this group. So I kind of like to think of the tower as a group identity of some sort of container for a group identity, and as depicted here, this identity, this group, this thing that is referred to, that describes a bunch of people, or even just two people, is being destroyed, is fallen apart, and one of the interesting, I guess, revelations with the attempts to restore the Marseille Tarot. One of the interesting revelations of that attempt by Alejandro Jodorowsky and who was his partner? Marianne Costa, I believe. One of the interesting things with the way that the tower was, you know, I guess, accurately archaeologically rediscovered was that um, the interpretation of these characters as falling, these two people here, as falling out of the tower, was changed to interpreting as they are dancing, as though this destruction of the tower is this like celebratory act. It's something, or it's an event that warrants celebration. I certainly like to think of both versions as the destruction of the tower being this thing that these people are falling out of, and they're freaking out. It's not a good feeling to be falling, that kind of weightlessness, and the background of this particular card, it's black, it's very chaotic, there's no order to their life. I like both of these versions. This one being, this happy celebration. But one way or another, I just kind of think of, let's say, in the situation of a relationship ending, right? You got a relationship. A lot of times, the way relationships end and begin, for that matter, is often people have really no idea what the fuck happened. I mean, it's over. Something happened, and people certainly try, often desperately, to come up with some sort of narrative that describes and explains what happened. But I think, if anything, often like I said, the desperation with which people approach trying to explain what happened, is some indicator to the opposite. If everyone just had a really clear understanding that relationships always ended because of one particular thing, no one would really bother engaging in the kind of extensive explanations that people often do. Yeah, it's a traumatic event. A big part of that trauma, kind of like with this card, I think, relates to, it's just like the rug is pulled out from under you. The ground beneath your feet crumbles. Your whole footing is lost. You don't, everything that you thought you knew about your life, that was defined mutually between you and the other person, is just gone, and you could feel like you're just free falling with nothing concrete to hold on to. You'd have to rebuild all of these structures that defined your life. But it is an opportunity to recognize that you are now you are now an individual. You're now on your own, and that could warrant, a celebration. Being a part of some sort of structure or group, even if it's just a relationship between two people, it it does in a lot of ways decrease our individual identity in place of an identity that we share. Now, I'm not going to say that the individual identity is better than the shared identity. I think both are important. Um, but I think it could certainly be true in some cases that the end of a relationship, or that the decline of a relationship, can be often caused by the kind of degrading lack of attention paid to the personal and individual. People often, it's almost like a cliche. People complain like, you know, when we started dating, you had dreams and ideas and you wanted to do things. Now you just sit around and it's like you're not a person anymore. But in some cases, it's like, well, no, now they're just half of this relationship, and this is the way they conduct themselves. It could be disappointing. Um, but I think this could be seen as an opportunity to, this kind of detachment from the group. And relationship is just one example. You could be fired from a job, or maybe your company just goes bankrupt. You're not even fired, but you know something, school is over for the summer, like any of these sort of situations where you used to regularly go inside of some sort of container, either literally or kind of metaphorically. You used to regularly be defined by your presence within some sort of container along with other people, and now that container is gone, so now you're just on your own. I think this could potentially be a great opportunity to focus on the individual aspects of ourselves. But I think this in this particular, seeing this card as an obstacle, I think the idea here is that this is what's being missed, right? This is that all the focus is on the destruction of this thing that was unifying between people, and no focus is placed on the individual, on yourself, let's say. And then the other, I think, potentially negative interpretation of this is, I think that I think that it's certainly not uncommon that individuals who are who feel like they are lacking in the personal individual identity department, especially when they don't really see any options on developing themselves. And I mean, often this used to be considered an aspect of spiritual development, and with so much spirituality being like not in fashion, often people are like, they're starved for some personal identity, for some individual mode of existence in the world, but most of the opportunities that used to kind of allow that are gone. It's like, well, you could join the Star Wars fandom, or you could join the Star Trek fandom, or you could essentially consume your way into these different memberships, right? Um, and and I do think that that kind of pursuit of a personal identity via the group identity, um, it could have it could have really great outcomes. You could find your way into all sorts of groups that share all sorts of exciting, you know, forward thinking, proactive, changing your immediate surroundings for the better kind of, themes. But sometimes people kind of engage in the opposite, where to get that personal identity, they engage with a group identity that instead occupies itself with um, destruction. And I think specifically often there's this, psychologically fascinating lashing out at, like, your attempt to find the personal identity is to lash out and try and destroy anything externally that might claim that there is a group identity for someone else. So someone else belongs to uh, a family, fuck families, right? Somebody else belongs to some sort of institution, it's like fuck institutions. It's anything that you feel like might give other people that sense of identity coming from something that they share and participate in socially. Destroy that, which kind of has this hilariously strange, ironic aspect to it because if you're engaging in a community that's, you know, focused on destroying these things, then you are also a member of a community defined by something, you know. But but I think maybe because often it's seen as acting on this meta level of like, well, we're not a community. We're just a bunch of people who get together and join forces to destroy these kinds of communal identities. Yeah, maybe it's overlooked, but nonetheless, that kind of drive, I think, could be also potentially an obstacle and kind of like a dangerous thing to get into. And then looking on the bright side, we got this dude juggling, doing his thing, similar kind of infinity swirly motion image thing here, and I think that this I, I, I feel like I still don't really have a very clear understanding or image that comes to my mind when I look at a lot of the tarot cards, or at least the consistent one, which is fun. I'm cool with that. I like engaging with the tarot to be a meditative, creative activity. But certainly some cards have a very clear idea that I really love exploring in more depth each time I come across it. While with some other cards, I'm kind of like, I'm still trying to figure this out. I'm still trying. Every time it's a radically different approach on interpreting it. But with this one, I got a consistent one I really like, and one aspect of it is value is perceiving, and this being kind of like an opportunity, um, value, being able to perceive value not in individual objects or things that you could focus on. Like we direct our attention, generally we direct ourselves and our attention to things we value in general, but also it's on the flip side, it's kind of impossible for us to simultaneously, genuinely and completely focus on multiple things. So often when we're evaluating value, evaluating value, we're kind of stuck just looking at the one thing, and this could be particularly um, counterproductive or limiting when you really just keep focused on one thing that you perceive to be valuable for just a really long time. When you just have one consistent thing that you're kind of staring at and you don't take your eyes off of it, other things might be popping up in your life, maybe even vying for your attention. You're like, nope, 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 don't need to look at any of that. Um, and I think this card to me symbolizes the potential to perceive that there's like a meta level of value that exists in the relationships between things that we could perceive of being potentially valuable, and and that value, it's almost like the superior thing of value to be able to evaluate the relationships between things, you know like often people, I think, myself included, if you're not paying attention, you just engage in kind of arguing or debating, whether with someone else or just with yourself, why one thing is more valuable than the other thing. But I think this card always makes me think of becoming aware, my attention being able to rest in this sort of weird in between place, kind of like this infinity S symbol. Like that's the thing of value. It's like, don't look at the coins in this image. It's not that the top one is more valuable. It's not that the bottom one is more valuable, but it's that they have some relationship to each other, and it's how they intersect and how they come in contact with each other, how they mutually redefine each other. That's the thing of value. It's that connecting loop that is the thing of value. And with this card, it's like this little guy, this juggler, I guess. You know, I might be more likely to interpret him as not having yet made the realization, because he's still staring. to me it looks like anyway, like he's still looking at one of these two coins as he's juggling them around. But I would, to follow with the metaphor of this kind of imagery, it would be like the the elevated juggler would be the one who never specifically looks at any of the objects that he's juggling. And if you've seen jugglers, sometimes you see this. Sometimes they kind of just stare up, and all the things they're juggling pass through their field of view, but they're not focusing on any individual thing. They're kind of just widening their gaze to just cover a broad area, so they could kind of simultaneously perceive of a bunch of things and where they exist. Um, in music, I really love the kind of the term drummer face. It's often used to describe someone who is in the middle of an intense drum solo, where the coordination required to make all of these different perfectly timed impacts across all these different targets, I guess, all the different drums that are all kind of surrounding the drummer, that the rate is too fast, and the drummer, it's like the drummer no longer looks at what they're hitting. They just kind of stare straight ahead, and they have this, 1,000-mile stare. They're just staring off into space while their hands are just flying. They're hitting everything. That kind of a thing. I feel like this card represents that opportunity. Or also, I haven't been doing martial arts for that long, so maybe my particular experience would be negated with more experience. But I noticed with fighting with martial arts, kind of focusing on any one particular body part of your opponent doesn't seem to be as good of an idea as just kind of defocusing. Generally I find that if I generally keep my head aimed at roughly their upper torso, but not staring at their upper torso, just kind of aim in that direction and almost defocus my eyes, I found I had the best results. I would be able to see essentially their whole body, but then, yeah, I don't know. I'm having a bit of a hard time explaining it. It's like you can see things really clearly if you focus on one particular thing, but then you absolutely lose the ability to really notice anything else. When you kind of defocus and have that broader view, you can't see any one thing specifically with a great deal of resolution and clarity, but you could certainly see a lot of things at once. And the last thing you want in a fight is that thing that maybe you've seen in cartoons or comical depictions of fights, where as two people are fighting, one of the fighters holds their hand out way to the side and wiggles it around, or even holds up a pair of keys or something and goes, "Hey, what's up here?" And then their opponent gets completely distracted with them holding up one hand and waving it around, and then they get clocked from the other side. They get a hook, Just stick your hand up to the right and then left hook. Yeah, that kind of hilarious demonstration of being too focused, I think, exposes inversely what I think the value of this card is. I'm going to wrap things up for today. Thanks for watching. Drop me a like if you enjoyed the video. Also, feel free to comment. Free reading if you would like to be entered into a draw for a free one-on-one reading. Those get picked on Sundays, so you got quite a few days. And you're welcome to comment on as many videos as you want. Also, just wanted to say a general thank you. We're getting pretty close to 100 subscribers. It might not sound like much, but I am personally very flattered. It makes me super happy. So thanks to everyone that has subscribed so far. It certainly contributes a great deal of inspiration to keeping me interested. And yeah, some of these videos, I know they're especially the shorts. I know a lot of them are could seem kind of short, but often these are the final step of me just sitting there staring at a card for like an hour and a half, just crunching ideas in my mind. And but yeah, so it's certainly very inspiring to know that there is at this point almost 100 people who have enjoyed something enough to push a red button. Thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.